Krafft, Audio Memoir Part 4. Once von List forced my cooperation, my first assignment for Die Wahrheit was to decipher a document seized at the infamous Hotel Royal in Paris. Well, infamous to someone like me, who spent a career studying groups that dabbled in, for want of a better term, the occult. I dislike that word. Practitioners of what some condemn as witchcraft are usually ordinary folk. They just approach the divine in a different way than their neighbors at the cathedral. The Societe Occult, on the other hand, had no such problem with the word. Their wealth and power protected them from your average pitchfork mob, and they sought to use dark magic as a means of extending their influence. I knew at once the documents were pages from the Society's fabled Tome of Rituals. It was a so-called spell book, compiled over centuries. Only their inner circle had ever seen it. But something terrible happened back in the 20s. Some crisis that compelled the Society to take the book apart and hide the pages in sacred places around the world. Because I recognized the pages, I was rewarded with the task of tracking more down and reconstituting the book. As he often reminded me, von List had my beloved Sasha under arrest. Succeeding at my task was my only chance to keep us both alive. Gabriel Krafft, Audio Memoir Part 5. My servitude to Die Wahrheit was almost over before it truly began. I was tasked with gathering the lost pages of the Tome of Rituals, but I had no idea where to start. All I had was a few pages already in von List's possession. Von had notes scribbled in the margin, and just as von List began threatening to execute my poor Sasha, I recognized that handwriting. One of the patrons of my university was an amateur demonologist. The hobbies of the idle rich. Anyhow, he must have once possessed the pages to have jotted down those notes. Von List had him arrested and tortured. He revealed he had been a member of the Society, one entrusted with hiding tome pages. He listed others who also possessed a few. With enough pages, I deduced the locations of various artifacts listed within them. For a time, I was von List's most valuable helper. He rewarded me with a letter from Sasha. Proof of life, he called it. I tried not to weep as I read it. Von List hated that. But things turned for the worse when none of the artifacts seemed to have any power. I had made a devil's bargain to keep my beloved alive. But my luck was running out. Krafft, entry number 6. I had found von List the artifacts in the Tome of Rituals. They proved as useless as the rest of the relics Die Wahrheit plundered. He looked at me with more disgust than usual, losing faith in me. The moment I was no longer useful would be the end of me, and my Sasha. Though we were never officially married, and we kept our union from prying eyes, Sasha was my spouse. I could not give up until we were reunited. But the search for a mystical Wunderwaffe to save the Reich was based on the delusions of a Nazi death cult. I was beginning to despair. And then the incident at Project N Station punched a hole into the dark ether, awakening the artifacts in the blink of an eye. My fear I was not producing results became abject terror that I had handed Wolfram von List the ultimate weapon. Krafft here. I have been thinking about something that happened when the artifacts awakened, and von List bonded with Cortifex. One of the first things he did was to gather all the pages from the Tome of Rituals that led us to the scepter of Cortifex, and lock them away in his office. I stayed out of his way. Frankly, I was terrified. The man was already dangerous. But now, there was a light in those pale blue eyes that... Well, you get the idea. But in hiding the origins of the scepter, von List raised some troubling questions. Was there some vulnerability mentioned in those pages? Some threat to his plans? I was not on the expedition that recovered the scepter. All I know is it was found in Egypt's eastern desert, far from the great cities of antiquity. I heard there was a temple to Osiris there, long forgotten and not mentioned in ancient records. I suspect those pages may provide a breakthrough for our little resistance movement. There must be some reason von List hid them. Just something to keep in mind as we search for a way to stop the Wahrheit before the worst can come to pass. This is Krafft. I want to talk about dark ether runes, those little symbols you see all around you. I first saw them on loose pages from the Tome of Rituals that I tracked down for the Wahrheit. Then, we found them inscribed at all the sites where we found the dark ether artifacts. I could see they fit no known human alphabet, but some of my colleagues attributed them to the ancient Aryans. Their reasons were obvious. Von List answers to Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler, whose belief in German superiority is the core of the Nazis' poisonous ideology. Himmler wanted the Wahrheit to find evidence the Aryan race invented the hallmarks of civilization, including written language. But kissing Himmler's backside would not change the facts. These runes were not Aryan. They were, however, used in mystical rites, as far back as Egypt's 4th dynasty, and as recently as the 1920s. Belekar has since explained to me that they are the basis for dark ether rune magic. She is endeavoring to teach me their use. But I fear I have been a poor pupil. Some runes are associated with specific demons, like Cortifex or Saraxis. Others, well, I suppose that remains to be seen. Gabriel Krafft to Special Forces. By now you know the dark ether entities dwelling within you have visited our world before. Those who could perceive them have mistaken them for ghosts, deities, even angels. My own description of them as demons owes more to my academic background than to any belief they are infernal in origin. But we all see the world through our own lens. One can hardly blame a Viking for seeing Nauticus as a frost giant, or the ancient Greeks for thinking Invicta was the war god Ares. My point is that our own biases color how we see them. You hear demon and you think evil. The truth is much more nuanced. These are immortal beings from another universe, as capable of benevolence as they are of doing harm. In short, they do not share our sense of right and wrong. So never forget, these are not demons in some biblical sense of the word. They are your partners, and their hatred of Cortifex assures that our goals are aligned.